There is absolutely no concept of consistency in Islam. Never has been, never will be. Why? Because the God of Islam is the God of inconsistency, and the Prophet of Islam is the Prophet of hypocrisy. If you criticize Islam, Allah and Muhammad will moan and wail that you're criticizing Islam, but Allah and Muhammad gladly criticize your religion. Why the inconsistency? If you say a negative word about Muslims, Allah and Muhammad will sob and whimper because you're so mean. But Allah and Muhammad call non-Muslims the worst of creatures. Surah 98, verse 6 of the Quran. Why the hypocrisy? When the pagans of Mecca wouldn't allow the Muslims to take the pilgrimage to Mecca, Allah and Muhammad whined endlessly about the intolerance and the oppression. But when Muslims conquered Mecca, Allah and Muhammad declared that only Muslims, no one else, could take the pilgrimage to Mecca. Why the double standards? Inconsistency, hypocrisy, and double standards, Islam's unholy trinity. Last week, I challenged Muslims to give me one unequivocal statement from the Quran saying that the text of the gospel has been corrupted. I warned them, because I knew what I was planning, I warned them not to give me verses that don't refer to the gospel or that don't refer to the corruption of the text. Muslims responded with an array of Quran verses that don't refer to the gospel and don't refer to the corruption of the text. And they repeatedly claimed to have met my challenge. What these Muslims don't realize is that, as usual, their hypocrisy has led them into a trap, and that they now have to admit that their own book, the Quran, has been corrupted. In the coming days, we'll be going through a number of different ways that Muslims have condemned their own God, their own prophet, and their own book without even realizing it. But in this video, we're just going to set the stage for the fire and brimstone that they have brought down on the Quran. Let's look at two verses of the Quran and think carefully about what these verses say. You should learn the reference here. I've included the verses in the description. Be sure to copy them and paste them regularly. You're about to see why. Surah 15, verses 90 to 91 of the Quran. Of just such wrath as we sent down on those who divided Scripture into arbitrary parts, so also on such as have made Quran into shreds as they please. Made Quran into shreds as they please. According to the Quran, someone shredded the Quran. That's the Yusuf Ali translation, the most popular English translation. Let's look at the M.H. Shakir translation. Like as we sent down on the dividers, those who made the Quran into shreds. Oh my goodness, once again, someone shredded the Quran, according to the Quran. My favorite here is the Palmer translation. As we sent down punishment on the separatists who dismember the Quran. The poor Quran has been dismembered. It's been shredded and dismembered. Again, these verses in all three translations are in the description box. Copy them, paste them, and keep pasting them until Muslims finally get the point. What's the point? The point is that the harshest language the Quran ever uses about any book is right here in Surah 15, verses 90 to 91. The Quran never comes close to saying that the Torah has been shredded, or that the Psalms have been shredded, or that the gospel has been shredded. The Quran only says that the Quran has been shredded and dismembered. Question for Muslims. Since Allah declares that the Quran has been shredded and dismembered, should we conclude that the Quran has been corrupted? Hypocrisy alert, their response will be, no, David, Allah saying that the Quran has been shredded and dismembered has absolutely nothing to do with someone corrupting the Quran. Oh, really? So, even though this is the harshest language the Quran uses of any book ever, it has nothing to do with the corruption of the text of the Quran. But if the Quran elsewhere says something that can't possibly be referring to the corruption of the text of the Torah or the Gospel, it will somehow be conclusive proof that the Torah and the Gospel have been corrupted. Interesting methodology. I asked Muslims for a single unequivocal statement from Allah in the Quran claiming that the text of the gospel has been corrupted. At the end of his second response, Adnan Rashid put this text on the screen. As for the current Bible, the following verses of the Quran categorically state that the scriptures of the Jews and the Christians have been corrupted. Now, we went through Adnan's entire video in a live stream. The link is in the description box. And I'll be posting separate videos on all of the main verses that Muslims use in their desperate attempts to show that the Quran affirms the corruption of the Torah and the Gospel. But let's look at an example to illustrate the hypocrisy here. Adnan quotes Surah 3, verse 78 of the Quran as a verse that categorically states that the scriptures of the Jews and the Christians have been corrupted. Here it is in Adnan's video. And indeed, there is among them a party who alter the scripture with their tongues, so you may think it is from the scripture, but it is not from the scripture. And they say, this is from Allah, but it is not from Allah. And they speak untruth about Allah while they know. Does this verse mention the gospel? Not at all. This verse is actually about Jews. Does this verse say that they change the text? No. It says that there is a party among them who alter the scripture with their tongues. So, there are some Jews who say, the Torah says such and such, when it's not really in the Torah. Does that suggest in any way that the text of the Torah has been corrupted? Muslims will say, yes, obviously, because they're hypocrites. Watch how quickly I can get them to contradict themselves. Every conversation goes something like this. Muslims, don't you say that various groups like Shias or Sufis or Ahmadis or ISIS jihadis misrepresent and distort what the Quran says? Yes, we do say that. Does this mean that the text of the Quran has been corrupted? Not at all. If I go around telling people that the Quran says that I'm a prophet, wouldn't I be altering your scripture with my tongue? Yes, you would, David. Would this have anything to do with the corruption of the Quran? Absolutely not. So you would agree that if someone is misrepresenting a text in his speech, this has nothing to do with the text being corrupted, right? Yes, as long as we're talking about the Quran, we know that simply misrepresenting what the text says doesn't change the text. But if the Quran says that a certain group of Jews altered the Torah with their mouths, that means that the text of the Torah has been corrupted. Yes, clearly and indisputably. Yes, if someone misrepresents the Torah, he's magically altering the text of the Torah. So here's what we have. If the Quran says that certain Jews misrepresent in their speech what the Torah says, Muslims take this as indisputable proof that the Quran categorically affirms the corruption not only of the Torah, but also of the gospel. I regard that conclusion as delusional and borderline insane. But if you ask these same Muslims whether the Quran's claim that the Quran has been shredded and dismembered suggests in any way that the Quran has been corrupted, they say no. And they'll call you stupid for even suggesting that the Quran is affirming its own corruption. Notice, if the Quran had said that someone shredded the Torah, Muslims would say that this proves categorically that the Quran is affirming the corruption of the Torah. It would be their go-to verse. If the Quran had said that someone shredded the Psalms, Muslims would say that this proves categorically that the Quran is affirming the corruption of the Psalms. It would be their go-to verse. If the Quran had said that someone shredded the gospel, Muslims would say that this proves categorically that the Quran is affirming the corruption of the gospel. It would be their go-to verse. But since the Quran says that someone shredded the Quran, Muslims say that it has nothing to do with the corruption of the text. It's their no-go-to verse. Muslims decide ahead of time what they want Allah to say, and then they go to the Quran and twist and distort Allah's statements until He says what they want Him to say. Here again, Muslims treat Allah like a dog that's only allowed to speak when they say speak. Muslims, why are you like this? You're like this because your religion forces you to be like this. Your God, the God of inconsistency, and your prophet, the prophet of hypocrisy, and your book, the book of double standards, your unholy trinity of irrationality, have forced you to be like this. And now you're all going to help me show the world what your religion really is. Welcome to Panic Land. Population 1.6 billion. Talk to you tomorrow.